Hello, Casper from Toddle here. Today I have a very special video for you guys. Today we're going to be building a Pokemon app using the Pokemon API. But the funny thing about this video is that I'm not going to be building the app, neither is anyone from the Toddle team. Instead is one of our power users from our Discord server, Stockton. He is going to take you through building this Pokemon app. So lean back, enjoy, and take it away, Stockton.
Hello. In this tutorial, we're going to be recreating this watch face right here. So it's pretty simple in terms of the different features that it uses. So we're going to be using a single API, which is the Pokemon API, to get all of this information, as well as a bunch of interactivity and things inside of Toddle itself. So a few things that we'll be doing, obviously, is having a time, a date. We're going to have an image, and the interactivity on this image is if you click on it, it will actually cycle between 4 different images. So there's like the normal front one, which they call the default front, the default back, and then there's the shiny front and the shiny back if you want to see those. So that happens on click, or I guess if this was on a phone, it would be tap, so you could tap through those. And then you can go forward or next in terms of seeing the new Pokemon. And you'll notice that the index number, or the Pokemon item number, or the number of which Pokemon this is, kind of is in this subtle background, if you could see that. So we have next, you could go previous. You can also just go to a random one. So we got 756 here, which is, I don't even know how to say that. So there we go. Stakataka. That's hilarious. So this is what we are going to be building to include all of this different functionality. So let's jump right in. We're going to start by creating a new branch right here inside of the watches project. So we're going to call this Pokemon. And while we're doing that, let's get a little bit familiar with the Pokemon API that we're going to be using. So if you go to pokeapi.co, you'll have this screen, and it allows you to kind of explore what some of this data will look like. So we're going to be using this API in order to retrieve all of the different Pokemon and the information, and it gives us a nice little preview here. So we'll be exploring with some different things we can do here. We're also going to be dealing with some dates. So this is the actual developer documentation that for the functions that Toddle uses in order to create those, create the dates and format it. So we'll be referring to this. So here we are inside of our inside the watch project, and I am zoomed in here, so I'm at 125% just to make sure that it's nice and visible. Okay, so let's choose one of these that we're going to edit. Boop. Double click, didn't work. Let's not, be the first. Let's come down here after spline. Okay, so let's do this one. Placeholder watch, watch card, placeholder watch. Here we go. Let's hop in here and we can start to edit this. We've got our outline, which already is in the 240 by 280, 16 pixels of gap here, and 24 pixels of margin. I may change the 24 actually to be more like 15, just so I have a little more space. We want to go right up around. If you notice here, like we kind of get close. If this was 24, all of these things would be pushed in. Oh, we have a null, pushed in a little bit more. So we're going to do that. Just give us a little more space around the edges here. And then inside, all we have is an SVG. So we're actually going to be able to delete this. If we look at our original, let's just kind of break this up into... Hey, what is happening here? Here we go. Like the different sections. So I'm just layout wise, we have our outer container, and then inside what we're going to do is have a top div that'll have the date information. We're going to have a middle div, which will have like the image and text information, and then we're going to have a bottom div with our controls. So we're going to need 3 divs inside here, and then we're going to have a 4th div, which will be positioned absolutely for this kind of background index number. So let's start by kind of creating that layout. So let's add a div, click on the top, push E to add elements, and then you can select div right here. So we're going to have 1 div for the top, 1 div for the middle section, and then another div for the bottom section. So we'll just go ahead and give these names. Now for the first div, well actually for the outer div, what we want to do is space between. So I want everything to kind of be spaced out inside of this spaced out vertically. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So I'm just going to double click right here. So it's going to boom, push the top and the bottom to the top and the bottom. So how about that? In this first one, we're going to have an H1. So just a heading tag. This doesn't really matter for a watch. You know, it's not semantic HTML, but that's what we're going to do. And here we're going to choose the date. So the top one is actually the time. So we're going to choose time. And so we're going to modify this to use a formula. And we're going to go in here and we're going to choose now because we want it to grab the exact time it is right now. But obviously this is not in the format that we want. So this is actually the long version of this. So we're actually going to apply some more steps into this formula in order to format this. So we have now, which is gets this time right exactly right now, and we want to format this. So we're going to say format date. And this is where we can kind of look at this documentation, right? So we're actually using this formula and it takes two properties. One is the location and the other is an object that has different options. So we can kind of see what that looks like. We have locales as a first property and options as a second property. And that matches what we're seeing inside of toddle, where we have locales as the first property and options as the second property. Now options is an object. So we are going to want to create an object and then we're going to see what parameters and properties we can use inside of that option, that options object. So we have our locale options here, and then we're going to come down and we're going to find the date time ones, date time component options. So this would be inside of our object, and I want to find the ones for day, so 2-digit, and we want to find the ones for hour and minute. Okay, so you can see that for hour and minute, we can choose numeric or 2-digit. So in order to construct this, we're going to have an object here. So the first one was that locales, and then the second was an object. And inside the object, we have our different options. So first one is hour, and we're going to say 2-digit, which I think was like that. And immediately we can already see we're starting to get some different results here. So we're including our hour as a 2-digit. We're including our minute also as a 2-digit. And what would happen if we said numeric? Just to kind of nothing. Awesome. Well, this is what we want. So we're going to have our 10:04 a.m. We're going to have our time formatted in hour and minute 2-digit. Perfect. Inside this div, so we can see we have a div. Inside the div, we have H1. Inside this div, we're also going to include an H2. Just so it's a little bit smaller, really is all I want to go for there. And this one will include the date. So the date formula is pretty similar, except we don't have to include any of the format date options. So we're going to choose this. We're going to choose our formula. We're going to choose now. Okay, and now it's giving us the long date. So let's go format date again. And just like that, with no additional options, we have our date there. So we'll close this. Now it doesn't look great, so let's center things. So I'm just going to come and center everything to the top. And there we go. So now we have our date, our time, and our date. And that kind of matches what we have happening right here. So the next piece, so this div is that top one. In fact, we can even come to attributes and rename this. So I'm going to call this date time. Just so in the sidebar, it makes more sense to me. Like, oh, I know this top one is the daytime stuff. So then we have the middle div. The middle div is where we have our image. So here inside of the div, the middle div, we're going to grab an image. We're going to put it right there. It's a little big. Once we hook up the API, we're going to hook it up to the image. But for now, let's just style this to be a different size. And that size probably that is going to work for us is, I don't know. Let's just try some numbers. 200. Nope, too big. 100. 100 might work. 100 by 100. So there's our nice little block. We might adjust this more later, but this is what we're going to use. And I'm going to center it inside of this div. So the image should be centered inside of this div. And then this bottom div is where we're going to have our buttons. Oh, actually, in this div, we need the text. So let's do a paragraph. paragraph text here, and this paragraph text will be a placeholder for the Pokemon name. Pokemon. Okay, so we have our middle div with our pieces. Let's center things like that, and let's add just a little gap, like 3 pixels inside, just to give it a little bit of space there. And we may play with all of this spacing more as we get actual Pokemon in here. So then inside of this div, we have those 3 buttons. So if we come back here, we've got the date stuff, we got the Pokemon information stuff, and then we have the controls down here. So let's actually rename this one as well. Let's see. This div, we're going to say, we'll just call it details. This is our Pokemon details div. Oh, actually details is a semantic like HTML thing, so we can't do that. Let's call it Pokemon details. There we go. And this div down here, we're going to call it Pokemon. Oops, went away. Pokemon controls. Okay. So in Pokemon controls, we need some different buttons. One button for previous. Let's open this up. One button for the random, and one button for next. So we're going to do it like this. So this button text, we're just going to do the back caret with a dash and then say previous. This one we're actually going to input an SVG, and then this one we're going to do the next with the little dash in the front caret like that. So for this one, to input the SVG, we could just delete the current text that's there. So now we have kind of this empty button, and then let's go to our tablericons.com and search for random. And let's just grab this first one, come back and paste it in. So now we have our little buttons happening here. Obviously, it's not formatted and looking great, but that is fine. So this div, we actually want it to be, right now they're kind of stacked horizontally, vertically, and we want them to be horizontally. So we're going to go like this. That's going to put everything on the same line, and then we can style these buttons kind of individually as we're going, which actually maybe what we should do is style one of them first, then duplicate it and change the text, because that's going to be the easier part. So the background color here, we want to just do like a super kind of light, lightish, darkish gray. I'm not sure exactly which one I chose in the example. Oh, no color. So it's a little color on hover actually. So the background color here is actually gone. And then on hover, so to change the hover state, we'd come up here to hover, and now we could change it to be just a slight gray, like 200. Nope, that's too bright. Where'd it go? Background. Are we on hover still? Okay, so we need to go to hover, and then we'll go here, and we'll choose like gray 600. No. How about gray 700? There we go. That's better. Also, you'll notice that I'm switching between like having these around or not. To do that, you push T, and you'll notice the play pause button down here. So that's testing the app. So we're testing the actual kind of interactivity and functionality of the app. The other thing we're going to want to do for these buttons is add on a hover state. So for the pointer, so we're going to go back to our hover state. We're going to come down to effects, cursor, change it to pointer. That way, when you actually hover over a button, it will have the pointer like cursor thing, which normally wouldn't have. You can see here, it doesn't have it. So there's those. And then we do want to center everything kind of right in the center of that button. We're probably going to want to add on some radius, some border radius. Oh, it already has some. There we go. Okay. An outline, I think, is the only thing missing here. So outline, 1 pixel, very light outlines, comparatively. So that's light, very just kind of subtle. There we go. All right, close enough. We could actually probably do a 2 out, like, not going to get too nitpicky with design here. So a 2 pixel outline. There we go. All right, we are going to want to remove the width of the button. So right now it's set to 6 rem. You can see if I delete it, it kind of shrinks to match the thing. If we do, let's try 100 here. And then this one, well, actually, let's delete the other ones first. So we have our main button, then we have our two other buttons. So let's just delete these because what we're going to do is duplicate this. So a couple ways you can do it. One is Control Copy, click back on the top, Control V. So I will copy and paste the different things. Or you can hold Alt on your keyboard and just drag it down. So now we have our duplicate there. So this one is on the right. So now this is our next kind of button here. And then this one in the middle, we need to come grab that icon again because the one in the middle should not have the text, but it should have that icon. Now the icon's a little bit big, so let's come to the SVG property here and let's just make it a little bit smaller. So what does 30/30 look like? Too big. Let's do 20. 20. All right, that's looking a little better. Let's try 18. 18. That's looking pretty good. This one obviously needs to be a lot smaller than the rest. So let's try like 50. Let's try 30. 30 is a little too small. Let's try 40. 40 right there. And then within this, because it's now as a row, we want to add just a little gap here. So a little gap between the things. Let's try like 10. See what that looks like. That's probably good enough. I still think these are a little bit big. Let's try like 80. 50. No, 50 is too small. 70. 70. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. I still think the margin might be a little big here still. Or sorry, the padding inside. Everything's kind of pushing down. All right. See, we want everything to kind of fit nicely in here. So where were we at there? Was it 10? Let's try something smaller, like 5. Okay, just to make sure everything fits in. Okay, so we kind of have our scaffolding of what what the watch is going to look like, and now we need to start putting some data in. So let's connect to the API and start seeing what we can do with some of those results. So the first thing I might do is just explore this, right? So we're going to have a request that is to this URL. We have this page path. You can try a bunch of different page paths, right? So let me just try this. If I remove everything and all we do is / Pokemon, all right, this will tell us one thing that we need to know, which is how many Pokemon there are. 1,302. That becomes important as we're building this out because we're going to create that randomizer that will randomize between 0 and 1,302. The other thing we can do is if we look at these results, we can actually see, Bulbasaur is the first one and he has a number of 1. So by just including a number at the end of this value here, we can successfully retrieve all the details for a single Pokemon. So right now, because we did 1, we're getting all of the single details of the Pokemon of Bulbasaur because he's number 1. If we went to number 2, it would be Ivysaur, right? So this is actually the method that we're going to do. We know there's 1,302 Pokemon, and we're going to use the API like this. So we're going to copy this to our clipboard, and we're going to come back and create an API. So let's just call this get Pokemon. And here I'm going to paste in what we just copied and push tab. Tab is going to make all of the page path parameters kind of go down into these path section. So right now it's hard coded to 2, which is going to return Ivysaur, and here's all of the data returned by Ivysaur. So we have abilities, we have his different forms, we have game indices, held items, we have all of his moves, and we could use all of these to add interactivity. We are going to be using sprites because sprites are the images of the Pokemon. And we also want this to be dynamic and changeable. So in order to do that, we have to create a variable. A variable will store this information and allow us to modify and do actions and things on that variable. So let's come back here. The variables we're going to use, let's just call this Pokemon number. And the initial value will be 1. And so let's come back to our Pokemon API. And instead of just having 2 hard-coded here, we're going to choose our Pokemon number, which will be 1. So that will be who is 1 Bulbasaur. And if we come and change the Pokemon number, so let's do 10, for example, now the Pokemon returned should be a different one. And who can we see? Caterpie is now the new one because we've called Pokemon 10 instead of Pokemon 1. So let's set this back to our Pokemon number is going to be 1. And actually what we can do for the initial values, we can make it a random number. So that way, every time that it loads, we'll actually be getting a random guy instead of a normal one, which will be kind of fun. So Pokemon number, we're going to change the initial value to be a random number. So let's do that. So random number here. Obviously, there's no like 0.6 of a Pokemon. So what we need to do is multiply this number by the total number of Pokemon that we had, which was 1302. And then this is still not an even number, so we're going to round this. We could do round down. Sure, why not? Okay, so now every time this runs, we're going to have a random number. When we call the API, we are going to always have a random number here, or that's just the initial value. Once we still can modify in things, we can set exactly which one we want. Which is quite simple to do with these like buttons, right? So for example, this next button, we're going to attach an event to it. We're going to listen for the events that happen on the button and then do a action on the event. So when this button is clicked, what we're going to do is set our Pokemon number as a formula. So we're going to click formula here. We're going to set the Pokemon number as the current number. So we'll choose whatever it is right now. And then we're going to add 1. So it's currently 818. We're going to add 1 to it. So the new value is 819. So let's test this. We could push T or push the play button here to test our app. So let's go look. Currently we're at 818. Push play. Click next. Now, if I go and look at this, we should be at 819. Why? Because we did an action on this variable. Same thing with the previous button. We're going to hook on to that click listener. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to set our Pokemon number. We're going to choose a formula here. We're going to say, take the current Pokemon number and minus 1. So we were at 819. Now we're going to go back down to 818. Now, one additional consideration we could do here is what if you were at 1 and you hit previous and it goes to 0? Well, 0 wasn't an option, right? So if we come here, we say 0, we submit that, it's going to say, oh, there's nothing there, right? So we can actually mitigate against that inside of this formula by doing a max calculation. So it's either going to say the max, what it does is it takes the biggest number between a list of numbers, right? So here we have our number of 818. What we want to do is put 1 here. So that means that if this number ever gets lowered below 0, the output will still always be 1. That's what max does in this case. Okay, so now that we have our Pokemon, we're actually getting details based on a Pokemon number. Let's attach some of these other things to the Pokemon. Oh, we got to do the randomizer here. So let's on that click event. So when this button is clicked, then same thing. We're going to set the Pokemon number to be a random number. So set Pokemon number. Yeah, I don't know why I said like we don't need the current value of it. We're going to set a random number. So we're setting the Pokemon number as a random number. We're going to multiply this by our options. So 1302 is the total, and then we're going to round this down. So same formula as before. Every time we run it, you can see we get a different random number. Okay, so this should be working now. To handle that for us, let's attach some of these other details. So this P, for example, where we have the Pokemon name, we're going to make this a formula as well. So formulas are how we do all dynamic data. We're going to come back here. We're going to choose directly our API this time. So we're going to choose the Pokemon, choose the inside of the data of that Pokemon, and then we need to figure out where the name is. Actually, it's just right there. So there's our name. It's coming in as like all lowercase. let's capitalize this just so it looks a little better. So capitalize will take the like any word and make sure that it is capitalized, so the output is like this. Perfect. And then here, this image, we're also going to replace dynamically with a value from the API. In order to do that, you have to replace the source attribute. So if we're on the image, we go to source, we're going to modify this. So again, this data is coming directly from the API. And we're going to choose data, and we're going to choose sprites. Sprites are like the images. And we're going to choose front default. So this will now take the value at this kind of data path in the API. So within data sprites front default, and it's going to put that right there. So now we have like things kind of working. So we can go back and it will show us whatever number that was. We go back. Now this is the one previous. We choose a random one. It's going to give us a random one. And so we have the image there of the Pokemon. Let's come back to our tree here. So we have our placeholder watch. We've got within that, we've got the date time details. We've got the Pokemon details, and we have the Pokemon controls. We want to add the actual index number of the Pokemon back here as well, just so like it's easy to tell where we're at. So let's add one more div. This div is special though, because it's not going to be like the other ones where it'll be stacked and they'll all kind of space out nicely. This one we're going to set to be absolutely positioned relative to the parent container. So we're going to say inside it's the parent. So this is the parent container. This is our absolutely positioned div. It is not going to respect the bounds that the other elements have. So it's going to just be on top or beneath or just over everything. So we can give this one a name as well. So we'll call this one our let's call this one just like the Pokemon number div. So inside here, we are going to have let's do a span, and the span will contain the index number of whatever Pokemon we have selected. So we have our Pokemon data ID should return the number. So it's kind of hard to see, but it is up here. So 833. So Chutai is Pokemon 833. So let's style this up a little bit. So let's go to styling. Let's make this much bigger. So size, I don't know. Let's play with some font sizes here. What if we just do 100? Hey, that might be it. 80. Let's do 80 just for funsies. In case we get up to like 1,200, we want that to be able to fit here. I think then we might want to change like the color here just so it's a little bit lighter than where it's at right now. Okay, that went darker. Too high, so 500 maybe. 500 might be good. Okay, so you notice that it is at the top though, right? So how do we push this down now to be the bottom? Well, we're absolutely positioned. So we have to kind of manually define where we want to put this. One thing we could do is we could say, go to the very bottom. Right now you're at the top. So let's say start from the bottom, go 0 pixels up, right? So you're going to be pegged right to the bottom. We could also do this like from the top, same thing here. If we wanted to do right as well, just to kind of demonstrate, it's going to push to the right. So we could do a combination of this. So we could say bottom right, and that would do to put it here. But I think we do want it in the center. If we kind of look back at what we got happening here, it is in the center, but it's just kind of, it's at the bottom, but it's just kind of up a little bit right above the title here. So let's take this and we'll go bottom, and let's just kind of push it up a little bit. So starting at the bottom, go up 100 pixels. That's too much. Let's try 80. Still a little bit too much. I'm actually going to put my selector here, and then I'm going to use arrow keys up and down to just kind of put it where I want it. Maybe right there. Cool. So then the other thing, like the Pokemon details is now behind. We want it to be in front of. So we handle this kind of layering, this stacking, this order of things where they are on top of others with a property called z-index. So let's come to our Pokemon details and let's find the z-index property. That's the background size. Okay, it's probably going to be a placement z-index. There we go. So the higher the number, the more like up on the page. If this was like a topographical map, z-index would be higher. So if I put this at 10, now it is above our Pokemon number, which is starting at 0. So Z index here. If I was to do 20, now it would be swip swapped, right? So we're going there. So let's keep this as 0. We're gonna have our Pokemon Pokemon details are pushed higher, Pokemon numbers actually push lower, and then this still is a bit bright, so we're going to bring this a little bit darker. That looks better. Little more contrast. Okay, so that is like pretty good spot. Obviously we could clean up the styling a little bit, like make sure everything kind of fits nicely within this watch frame. But let's test it real fast, just see where we're at. So if I go previous, this should change to 832. If I go random, this should give us a random one. And if I go next, this should go up one. So perfect. We're missing the ability to click on this image and rotate through some images. So in order to do that, we're going to define another set of values, and we're going to create just an array ourselves of the different sprites. So let's call this one images, and it's going to start as an array. So an array will allow us to sort of define the images ourselves within the array, and then as we're swapping through on click, we're going to iterate through the array to choose like the next ones, and we'll just keep kind of like going that way. And that probably made no sense, but hopefully it will as we build this out. Let's see. We're actually let's see. Image index. So we're going to choose 4 images, and so those will be, 0, 1, 2, 3 is how the array of images is going to work. So we're going to have image index. It's going to start at 0, and then when we click on the actual image here, we're going to go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And so 1 is going to correspond to one image, 2 is going to correspond to another image. That's how we're going to do this. So I'm still, getting this myself, but here we go. Okay, so for our image property, we want it to have multiple options to be able to switch between, and then we're going to be able to choose one of them with that image index property. So image index. So here we're going to go to the image, we're going to go to the attributes, and what we're going to do is kind of, instead of defining it like this, we're going to create an array. So an array is going to hold, it's like a little bucket that's going to hold the different details that we want. And so the first one we're going to actually get from the Pokemon data sprites, and we're just going to do the front default. So the first item in the array is going to be the front default, and then we're going to grab the back default, so back default, and then we're going to do another one, and we're going to do the front shiny, so front shiny right here, and then we're going to do one more that is back shiny, back shiny, back shiny. There we go. Okay, so now inside of the source attribute, we have an array, and we don't want an array, we only want one of these. So which one are we going to choose? Well, that one we're going to choose is going to be based off of the image index. So we have that image index variable, which will be 0 through 3, so 0, 1, 2, and 3, which will give us our 4 values here that we can iterate between. So inside of this array, we want to get just one of the paths here. So we're going to get the image index path. So we have our array, we're going to choose get. So get will select just one of them. Which one? It's going to be the path starting at 0. So it starts at 0, which now is returning just a single item. And then we want to be able to iterate through this on the click. So let's go back to our image. Let's hook on to the click event for this image. Anytime it is clicked, we're going to set the image index to be the current value of the image index plus add 1. So whatever it is at currently, which is 0, we're going to add 1. So then it's going to start at 1. We can test that. So if I put it in test mode and we click the image index now is at 1. So it started at 0. Now it's 1, and we can see that the image actually changed to the next item in that array. So if we go to this image, we go to the attributes, we can look at this formula. It moved from the front default. Now it's down to the back default because we went from 0 to 1. And that's how that happens. Now the issue here is what do we do if the like you go above 4 or 3, right? So if we keep clicking this, now what happened? It broke, right? Because now our image index is above 3, which means that it's now going through that array. There's no more items in that array. If we go look at the image array here, so the image index now is at like 4, 5, 6, whatever. It's past the 3. So how do we change that? Well, we can use the some functions to do that. So here on the image index, what we can do is do min again. So, hey, what happened? Attach min. So 3. 3 is, we're setting that as like our ceiling. By using min, we're setting 3 as a ceiling, meaning if this number, image index, ever goes above 3, then we're going to put it as 3, right? So the third index here, so 3, which is technically our 4th item, it will never, it'll never go above 3. The other thing we can do is in the click event itself, do some logic to test if the image index is greater than or equal to 3 as well. So kind of double conditioning here. So here on the click event for the image, instead of just being able to say like, hey, whatever it is, add 1, we can add in some logic here. So we're going to say we're going to start with an if because we're adding in logic. So if the image index is greater than or equal to, 3, then set it back to 0. So anytime this is greater than or equal to 3 and you're trying to add another one, set it to 0. So like reset the piece. Otherwise, just take the image index and add 1. So we can see here that because our image index is already at a 6, the output is 0 because it's going to be reset if we try and add this more. Otherwise, it would take the piece here. Okay, so let's do this. Let's actually just reload our screen here just to kind of reset all of the variables back to their initial value. What that means is our initial Pokemon will be a random number because the Pokemon API is loading with a random number formula in the piece here. And it also means that our image index is now back to 0. So if we come to the attributes, we come to this, we are at 0. So our path, it's grabbing just the front default sprite or image from this. Interestingly, not all the Pokemon have front like the rest of them. So like this is a case where this Pokemon in the API doesn't have the sprites for back default, shiny front default or whatever, and all those things. So let's test. Let's go find another one. So we have Boltund. Let's find one we can actually, Chansey. I know Chansey. Okay. So if we click on Chansey, we should have the back default. We should have the front shiny, the back shiny. And then what I would expect to happen is now that we click it one more time, we've seen all 4. It should repeat back to 0. And it did. So we're back to 0. And it's a combination of 2 things. The biggest one being this formula here, where we're setting that safeguard. We're saying if the current image index is greater than or equal to 3, set it back to 0. Otherwise, do your addition, like do 2 plus 1 to get it to 3 or 0 plus 1 to get it to 1 type of thing. So there you have it. Now we have our fancy little watch face where you could imagine you're tapping this and you could see your different Pokemon flipping through the images. You could generate random Pokemon and see, oh, like the buzz, that's 125. Show off to your friends, all of that sort of thing. Last thing we might try and do is, a little style cleanup here. So put this height as maybe 50. Oops, that's not supposed to happen. 22, 2. Let's do 20. 30. 30 might be good. So let's go do that to these. 30. These buttons here, 30. Just to try and make things fit inside just a little bit more. Actually, what would happen here if we just remove padding? Nothing. Let's see. Gap. Actually, what if we just center everything? We're just barely outside of the dots here. So what can we do to kind of clean this up a little bit, make things a little bit smaller? I wonder, what if we decrease the font size of this just a little bit? Font size 2.25 rem. What if we do like 80? Oops. 20. It's a little too small. 30. Oh, actually, I know what we should do. Let's just change the size of the inner div. Okay, so undo, get things back here. So placeholder watch, we have probably what we could do is wrap all of these in a div. So let's call this give this a name too. We'll call this Pokemon wrapper. And then all of these items, so this will go at the top. And then all of these things will go inside here. So there's daytime. Here's our details. Here's our wrapper. There we go. And then we just have to reorganize things. So date time was at the top. Pokemon details was next. Pokemon number was last. Center that. And then our size here. So our max height, we're going to say 90%. Min height 90%. Max height 90%. Let's see, something, we made it much smaller. Okay, because let's see, center that. Give this a height of 90%. There we go. So we just took the outside thing, we put it inside thing, and now everything fits inside the inside thing. We do want to give us some gap here. To space everything out. And 10 might be just a tiny bit too much. There we go. Back to 5. So there we go. Now everything fits inside of the one inner thing by adding a wrapper. Hey, didn't we do a W here? Pokemon wrapper. Pokemon wrapper. Definitely a W. Hit enter. And it goes to an R. So there you have it. Fun little hacks. So we test this final time. We get a null Pokemon right there. I wonder if we could see which Pokemon. So 1203 is returning null. Let's try this. 1203. Resource not found. What about 1202? I thought there was 1,302 Pokemon. 1,300. Interesting. So maybe it's not. Because if we do this, there's 1,302 items. But apparently it only goes to 1,200. No, I don't know. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe what we do then is in all of our random things, we'd set a max Pokemon number. And here we set this to be like 1,000. And then in all of our randomness, so there was a random piece here. So random number 814. Hold on a second. Where's the rest of the formula? Pokemon number. Oh, here it is. Instead of 1302 here, we reference our okay, let's refresh. I'm not seeing the value I want. Okay, so in the Pokemon number, the initial value, we want to set this as our Pokemon number. Oh, I guess I can't reference the value here. Okay, so we just change this to be 1000, and there we go. Now we'll never go above 1000, and we could do that in the random generator here on this click event. Set the Pokemon number. Just change this to be whatever our max number is that we want. All right, well, there you have it. We created our nice little watch face here, and with some interactivity, and we can switch between different images.
Thank you so much, Stockton. Lovely walkthrough and very nice app indeed. If you are up for building similar apps just like Stockton, feel free to join our Discord server. We are around 1,000 people building in Toddle, and the Toddle team is also there. So join the Discord server, learn Toddle, and have fun learning to program through Toddle. Cool. See you guys. Bye bye.